Okay, hey everybody out there in internet land and watching and listening to this. Today I have a very special guest on the show that I still have yet to come up with a name for. Um, my good friend, my dear lifelong friend, and my moral compass, a true American patriot, and I know that word's been thrown around a lot, but in this case, it's true. Um, Master Sergeant Tyrone Holmes. He served. I could give you the bio, but I'm gonna screw something up. All I could say is I've seen this man in uniform, and he actually had a private assigned to him to wear another uniform because all his medals wouldn't fit on one uniform, so he had to have somebody else behind him with the rest of them. Anyway, Ty, let's hear a little bit about yourself before we get into it, okay?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you for having me. It's an honor to call you a lifelong friend. I mean, we've been friends longer than I can remember. I think since we came out the womb, um, we've known each other for literally elementary school. So, born and raised in Summit, New Jersey, like you. Um, Graduated Summit High School, attended college. After college, joined the military, actually the Navy, like you, 10 years. I did get out of the Navy, and after 10 years of serving, it was an honor, but I wanted to spend more time with my son. So I became an LAPD officer. And unfortunately, in the midst of my career there, somebody decided they wanted to attack America and thus had me recalled back to the military because up until that point, I didn't realize the president actually had permission or had a right to call anyone back that he deemed necessary
You
at
didn't
any
read the
time, regardless if
contract,
you
did you?
fulfilled your commitment.
You didn't read the contract, did you?
Yeah, I was guilty for that. I never
It
made that
was
mistake
4
again.
years active, 8 inactive. At least that's what
Yeah,
mine said.
it got me good. So
Yep.
for about 2 years, I played the game back and forth with law enforcement, military, and it just got old trying to shift mentalities and lifestyles between those. So thus, I made a decision to contact the military and say, okay, I want to come back full time, but I'd like to come back in the Army just because I had worked with the Army in the previous 2 years. Tremendous amount of respect for the leaders that I had served with, and I really wanted to be on the ground, on the front lines, and thus, I guess the military got sick and tired of my letters and calls, so they granted me permission to cross over to the Army, where I spent the last 15 years, and didn't regret a single day in uniform. I
Great.
rephrase that. I regret the last day in uniform because it was my final day in uniform.
Okay, now let's hear and I'm only doing this because if anybody does say anything about what we talk about later on in this podcast, I want them to get a frame of reference as to what your experiences, especially with combat, and you don't have to talk about anything you're not comfortable talking about, but you were a combat soldier. You are a combat soldier. You've been, for lack of a better term, in the shit, and you've drawn blood and chewed mud and drawn blood. So, I mean, I just want a little bit, and again, nothing that you're uncomfortable talking about, just so anybody that's listening to this could say, well, what does he know? They know now.
Okay, absolutely. In the span of 25 years, I was deployed for over 8 of those into combat zones. I have actually physically engaged the enemy in hand-to-hand combat, small arms fire and large arm fire. Um, I have been involved in numerous operations that were required us to seek out, capture, and destroy the enemy, and reconnaissance missions where we actually obtained vital information, i.e., cell phones, computers. I've worked with some of the finest, and I don't just mean in the Army. I'm talking about all branches, Navy, Air Force, even the Coast Guard, which some people don't realize was deployed to the Middle East. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people are going to be shocked when they hear this, but Coast Guard was over there with us for a
Yeah, we
while.
had we had a
And
detachment on my base in Japan of the Coast Guard.
see, there you go. And like I said, I've learned from some of the best. I actually came in, and my mentor was an actual soldier from Vietnam. He'd actually gotten out and came back in, and I learned specifically under him about the best way to lead in combat because I said, over 8 years and deployed to a combat zone. The 7 of those years were in leadership positions. The last 5 of those years were in senior leadership positions, which means I'm responsible for decisions I make will cost someone their life if I'm not making the correct decisions based off of the training that I had received over the course of my career. So having that responsibility and understanding that the magnitude of your decisions puts you in a different frame of mind, and thus allowed me to think not about me, but about them, and focus on the entire mission goal, which was obviously to complete our task, but to come home also in one piece. I have lost soldiers, unfortunately, in combat. I have witnessed people standing right next to me fall, and you still have to fight. That is your job. You mourn later, you fight then because you don't want to come home in a box.
Right.
And you will do no one else a service if you are that person that freezes up. When I see all these people now using the term patriot, I actually commented on someone's Facebook because someone I know specifically, I'm not going to say their name because it's someone that we both know,
Right.
was saying they're all patriots. And I basically said to her, I said, that's funny because that's normally a term that we, and when I say we, for those that don't know, Craig is a veteran too, a Navy veteran. And we have earned that title. We have shed blood and kicked mud and rolled around and deployed and lived in some horrid conditions to provide, to ensure that everyone has freedom. So when people are saying these patriots, sickening, because that is a term that is normally reserved for those that serve in the military, law enforcement, some of the agencies. It's not the people that we witnessed last week.
Right. And I just want to make a clarification. I know Ty hates when I say this. Is like, yes, I am a veteran, but I was nowhere near anywhere in the I guess range of service as Ty did. I served, I did, and I'm proud of my service. But Ty was in the shit, and I was behind it in more of a logistical role. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to overplay, that. And Ty hates when I say that because he says you put on the uniform, you're a patriot. But I do believe that some deserve more respect than others. And in this case, Ty deserves way more respect for his service than I do because, like I said, he chewed mud and spilled blood, whereas I may have gotten a paper cut or carpal tunnel from typing letters. Anyway, that beside the point. Let's talk about what's going on. I mean, you and I have been back and forth on the phone, texting and talking about this. I mean, I think it's safe for me to say, for you as well, that today's America is not the America that we signed the paper to protect and defend. We're hoping to get back to that America, but this past 4 years, especially this past year, has not been the America that we know and love. This has been like an alternate reality because of
Absolutely.
poor leadership. And I mean, I can't even say that I blame Trump for everything because, look, he didn't create a virus that shut us down. He just failed to lead us through it.
Correct.
And I'm also one that gives credit where credit is due. I don't know how many of you saw my Facebook the other day after all the insurgents happened when Mike Pence and Mitch McConnell, two men that I really despise, got up in front of the Senate and said, "You did not win. You did not stop our democracy." I give credit where credit's due. Those were the things that needed to be said by the men who needed to be saying them. Now, of course, Trump today resurfaced after 5 days in the bunker with his binky, and of course, the first thing he did was justify his little rally before the insurrection happened. But I mean, there are things. Ty, go ahead and jump in with your thoughts on this.
First of all, like you said, this is not the America you and I volunteered to serve. I can't believe what I've witnessed, not just last week, but over the last 4 years, that people who I had high value for, like I thought they were seriously very educated, well-rounded people, were starting to tote the line of conspiracy theories and disinformation. And I'm looking at them going, you're an educated person. First and foremost, check and verify. Like, don't just use one source. I don't ever use one source. I read multiple things to get a different perspective so that like we do in the military, when we want to gather intel, we take it all in from all over the place, we process it, and then we come out with an educated guess.
Mm-hmm.
So watching people just go around and saying, well, he said it, so it has to be right. I mean, I tell people, I said, it's called basic, decent courtesy, common sense. A man that has filed for bankruptcy 5 times, has admitted to cheating on his wife and all the other things, is not a person that I would ever use the moral compass in the person that I would tow my name, my reputation to. I look at people and go, do you have any self-respect? How can you allow yourself to just be so blinded and drink the tainted Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
And
Have you
it's not
ever?
Republican or Democrat things. All politicians at some point, they promise the world and deliver the minimum. When they run their campaigns, we always know if you don't, you do now. They may promise the moon, the stars, and everything, but they may just give you the sky.
But I
They're
mean,
not going to be able to deliver. It's not possible.
right. But I mean, in this past 4 years, did you ever? Because I know I've done this. Did you ever sit back and think, what is it that I'm missing? What do they see that I'm missing? Because maybe it is me. I'll be the first to admit that I have become set in certain ways. But I mean, I always look for what am I missing, and I just can't find that thing that they know that I don't, or I just
Well,
can't
you're
understand their
so damn
logic as
right.
to why they think they know that. We
You're
all know
actually
the
right.
sky is blue, but you know, I don't know. But yeah. So um, we could talk about this more, or we can also talk about. I know you're involved in some other things. A big
Right.
thing is education.
Well, absolutely. But before we move on to that, I did want to say, like, maybe it's a product of the profession that we were in. I mean, even if you spend a year, in the military, everything's checks and balances and accountability. It's real simple. I've seen leaders be relieved for what some people in the civilian world would say it's no big deal. Yes, it is. Because if you have lost the ability to lead and the competence of the people you are leading, they have to remove you because you are now a danger to the entire mission.
Right.
And I have sat back and said, take the political party out of this and look at this man as a man. And I'm like, in the military, we would have relieved him 10 different times
Yes.
for
Well,
this.
I'm
And
I'm glad you actually went there because the reason I was trying to shift off the topic was because I forgot what I was going to say, but you just reminded me. This is something that you and I have talked about. What people don't realize is that as military servicemen and women, when we take that oath, we do give up constitutional rights. We
absolutely,
cannot we cannot walk around with a flag for any political party or anything on our uniforms. We cannot speak out in public against or for anybody, and we do lose rights, but on the same token, freedom isn't free, and somebody's got to pay for that, and that's a compromise that we make to do something greater than ourselves.
yep.
But I mean, that's the other thing is where do these people think that they have the constitutional right to do some of these things? I mean, you
I'm
have the
bewildered
right
by
to
it.
protest, but you don't have the right to storm the Capitol.
Right. You're absolutely right. I'm sitting back going, how did people think? And I saw the Facebook posts of different people going, they're patriots, their constitutional right. I'm like, it's no one's. I don't care what your cause is. You don't get to do this. And what saddens me and upsets me and angers me is we're finding that more and more former military, they're saying now current military members were involved, law enforcement. These are people that are supposed to know. Yes, you doesn't matter what job you have, you are entitled to have a political party and the choice. But as you said, we volunteer sign our constitutional rights away. We did that for those active duty people. For the police, you have to know, as a former police officer, you know right from wrong. Your job is to uphold the law,
Well,
not
that's the
instigate
thing
and
is
incite the riot.
that's the thing, and I'm seeing this, and again, I don't like you. I don't trust one media source, one news
Right.
source. I look at all the things, but when I see in a video from somebody's Facebook phone, Capitol police officers just standing back, and let me say this before anybody gets their shorts in an uproar. I am not anti-police. I am not anti-law enforcement. I support the police. My way of supporting the police is letting them do their job and not second guessing them or standing in their way. With that said, Capitol police officers saw a mob of people coming, and maybe they were ordered to stand back to to minimize the risk of personal injury, or maybe some of them just said, "Hey, I agree with them." And I'm sorry, but in a couple of photos that I did see, there were some Capitol police officers wearing the dreaded or the infamous "Make America Great Again" hat. Now, in uniform, I, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to be, a billboard for any political party, be it Trump, Biden, anybody. So
Right.
why they were allowed to stand their post wearing politically affiliated gear, that's a question that I also ask. Who, where's the responsibility for that? Where's the accountability?
Well,
Who's
that
going to
comes
get
in
it?
with the chain of command, the leader, whoever was in charge, responsible. That's a lack of institutional control, which is again what we are saying about the current president.
Hmm.
It's all about lack of institutional control. And he should, number one, have that policy as set. And anyone that violates it, you're terminated. It's that simple. You're reprimanded the first time, second time you're terminated. That's real simple. As far as those police officers backing up, I find it hard to believe. And if they do find out that the Capitol Police were given an order to stand back and allow protesters to have a free run at the actual Senate floor where our nation's leaders are. I
Well, wait a
mean,
minute. Let me interject here. I don't consider those people protesters. The people outside the Capitol
terrorists. I'm sorry, you're
that
right.
were
You're absolutely
standing
right.
behind the barricade, waving their flags,
You're
they're
right.
the protesters. These were
But
insurrection. These
the
were
insurrection, you're absolutely right. And
insurrectors.
forgive me for that one. But I can't believe they were told to stand by and allow them to have a free, just a free path directly to there. Based off of watching some of the other video and seeing some of the other officers' interaction, there's a video where I don't know if you've seen it, where one officer is literally being beaten by objects while people are trying to get in.
Yeah, I
They
believe
were they
that's
were
the
authorized
officer.
to use
I believe
deadly
that
force.
officer was from New Jersey, actually,
And
from
that
South
was
River,
that
New
the
Jersey.
officer that was beaten. And to be honest, what people don't realize, number one, justify deadly force was authorized in
Hmm.
that situation. When you are in that position and you are protecting what you are protecting, it's no different than what the Secret Service do for the president. Do you ever think the Secret Service would allow you to get that close to the president? I have
No,
been to events with the president,
same
and I'm
here.
going to tell you right now, they don't let you get that close. So again, the Capitol Police, which are responsible for the security of the Capitol, there's an actual police, they're their own separate entity, well trained, heavily armed, and they have a lot of personnel to actually play, you know, matador to that terrorist group and just say go. While some of their fellow workers were leading them on a ghost chase to get them away from the Senate floor, engaging them when they could. And as you remember, the one famous picture now, infamous, where they had the item placed in front of the door with their weapons drawn,
Yes.
and they said they were literally telling them, "Don't make us do this. We will
Right.
put you down if you breach this door."
Right. Now let me ask you
So
this though. I mean, and this is me playing devil's advocate, and I don't necessarily believe what I'm about to ask, but do you think it's possible that they were allowing them to get into the rotunda, but at that point it was no further than, like, someone said, all right, let them into the rotunda, but block all the exits out of the rotunda except the ones leading back outside. And when the people came in, they thought, well, we're in now, let's just keep going. And that's why officers were leading them on a goose chase
no,
around.
I,
No.
I find it hard to believe that any leader, anybody that was put in charge, if they're that
Well, I would think
incompetent,
it
they
would.
make that call.
I would think it would almost be like a gauntlet. Let them
Yeah,
into the rotunda. That way, we have them contained.
no, that they saw the size of that crowd. You knew that
Right.
was number one.
Okay.
That's
Like
the
I said, it
size of
was
that
just a
crowd.
thought. I'm not like trying
Yeah,
to
but
spew any
if
conspiracy
someone made that
theories.
call again, that shows you their lack of competency
Okay.
and honestly that how they were in over their head. If you remember the BLM march and the positions, if you've seen the pictures and you go back and look at the force that they had
Oh
for
yeah,
that.
absolutely,
Unreal
absolutely.
compared to they didn't even bring additional officers in
Right.
for this. And my question to them is, you knew this date was coming. You knew there had been so much circled around this. Why was you not prepared? Why
Well,
did you
that's what
have
the
this? Why did you have that?
investigations now are going into, because apparently the Capitol Police put in several requests prior to that day to have National Guard, and they were all shot down at a higher pay level than what. So I mean, that could have been a direct. I mean, I don't know. That's why we need to have these investigations. But now, moving on
Absolutely.
from that, though, this whole talk about invoking the 25th Amendment and impeachment with only 8 days left, really, is it anything more than ceremonial? I mean, yes, I know that if he gets impeached a second time, it will not allow him to ever run for public office again. But On the same token, he's 76 years old. I mean, honestly, if he does it again, it would be a publicity stunt anyhow. So I think at this point, if they did that, and first of all, I've looked at how the processes work, and it's not an immediate removal. It would still take at least 5 days to strip the president of power. All right, it's not like, okay, Pence signs the paper, he's no longer president. There's a whole process, and I know that Nancy Pelosi was on the phone with the Pentagon, finding out to make sure that Trump cannot launch nuclear attacks and try to start a war. And luckily, because of the fact that our government is set up the way it is, a general could say this is not a lawful order and refuse to hit the button.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, if the process went through, even expedited, it would still give Pence at least 2 to 3 days in office. With that, all he has to do is sign a piece of paper, not saying he would, that would pardon Trump of any legitimate crimes or any legitimate charges that the federal government has against him. And yes, it doesn't erase state crimes, but the federal ones are the ones that really have the teeth that could stick the longest and give the best
Absolutely.
chance. So, I mean, wouldn't it, in my opinion, I think it would just be better to keep him sequestered, keep him under wraps, let him ride out the last 8 days, and let's move on. Instead of going through a whole process of making Pence the president, then having an inauguration. At this point, I mean, I hate to say it because it almost sounds like a defeatist attitude, but I think that would be better for the country than giving Pence a chance to do what Ford did for Nixon and pardon
I
him.
agree. I completely agree. I don't see the impeachment or the removal being anything but political, and it's going to go a long way to dividing us even more.
Yes.
Let him go.
Yeah.
He has literally 7 days in office.
Right.
He has basically been stripped of that power to, like you said, to launch, to do anything without checks and balances.
Yes.
For people that know, that was in place before, but more so now than ever. He is a man on an island by himself. Don't make him a martyr. That's what you're going to do. If you do this, you're going to make him a symbol that these supporters of his will carry on as more hating, this disgruntledness against the government. They hate us. Look what they did. I've literally seen and read posts where people have said he did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And I mean, I normally don't want to respond, but I've had to respond to people going, are you educated? Like, what world are you in where you don't believe that? It's called inciting a riot. Like, you can't go on a plane and say bomb.
Yeah,
because
you can't go in a movie theater and yell fire.
You can't do that. Exactly. So the president and Giuliani and his son saying, we're going to go down there, and the president making it worse. I'm going to go with you. We need to take it by force, strength, Rudy Giuliani, trial by combat. I mean, come on.
And again, like I said, I can't say it was completely Trump's fault because you also had your senators. You had your Ted Cruz, your what's his name, the other one, Sewell or whatever.
Yeah,
but you had these guys who were standing on the Senate floor as this was happening, basically cheering him on. So I mean,
that's sad.
People have to be held accountable. That's for sure.
Right.
Let's just hope that this new administration does follow through, because you know what? Laws have to be reset. This country has we're like a child now that has, taken control of our parents. It's time for the parents to be parents again. It's time for the adults to be back in the room.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I'm going to put my headphones in while we're talking just so I can hear you better. Okay. But you're right. Parents have to take their positions again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten crazy. I mean, even some of these, like here, I have 2 sons, and I always tell people, if my son ever does anything, I don't sugarcoat it. I tell him exactly what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. If he screws up, I let him know that. I don't hold anything back because as a parent, I owe that to him. And I tell him, I'm going to be your hardest critic because I am your father and I demand a certain level of professionalism and the way that you conduct yourself and accountability. So sadly, you're right. A lot of people have lost their way with telling their kids that, hey, by setting the example, not just telling your kids, like, I had a father who he led by example. I tell people, I said,
I remember.
People always say, wow,
I
Yeah.
remember
Well,
them.
people always say the military, oh my God, the military did this. And I'm like, this is not the military. I said, the military just sharpened what was already laid there by my father. I said, my father was, while he was a man of flaws like we all are, he always talked to us about, owning up to your responsibilities, accepting it. And the difference between right and wrong. I don't care if everyone else jumps off the bridge. You be the one to call 911 and say, a bunch of idiots jumped off the bridge, come help them.
Right.
He said, you have to be and use common sense. And I learned by watching him also, and also just being the strong person he was by saying, you can't be the person that just goes along with the crowd because, hey, it's a thing to do. And that's what we have a lot of right now. We have a lot of followers and not enough real, genuine leadership that have the fortitude, courage to speak the truth. And with the political guys, Cruz and them, I'm ashamed. And Ted Cruz is a man. Someone talks about my father as the, conspiracy to commit with Lee Harvey Oswald, and the
Yeah.
way that he talked about that man's father, that family. Then for you to go out for the next 4 years and tote his line, that says you have no pride in you, yourself, your
No,
family, your
you're a
name.
political
I
whore.
would never.
You're a political
And
whore
it's
at that
sad.
point. Yeah.
And they care
And
more about their job than they do about their name. Nothing matters to me more in life than my family name.
yeah, and now this is a good transition into the education we were talking about because as I said, your lovely wife is a teacher and you've become very involved in local educational projects and all that. And I see this what's happening now is because and it's not the teacher's fault, it's the administrator's fault for changing the curriculums. They don't teach ethics. They don't teach things in school that they taught when we were kids. Basically, they just teach children how to pass tests, and I think that's a big part of why we are uh, why things are happening the way they are right now. Because I mean, yes, a lot of those people, those rioters and whatnot, are our generation, and they've always been there. But now you've got the new crop coming up through the school system and all that are not learning the things that we learned. So they're at even more of a disadvantage than the people that just didn't pay attention in school. You know, I mean,
You're absolutely right.
you know what I'm saying there?
You're absolutely right. Like you see this not just in the school system, but I've seen this in the military. There were younger kids coming in my last 10 years, had me scratching my head like, wow, like,
Hmm.
did you learn anything in high school? Did they teach you anything? Like basic common understanding how to deal with people, how to accept responsibilities. A lot of kids coming in where it was always never their fault. Their
Right.
shortcomings were never their fault. And that falls on education, parents, and society. Like, I think it started with a participation trophy. I think that's where it all started. We all have to be winners. No, we're not all going to be winners. You're not going to succeed every time. You're going to fail a lot. And actually, failing sometimes can actually benefit you more than winning because it's going to make you and it's going to motivate you to go further. And that's what I try to tell a lot of the kids nowadays is sometimes you need to fail to actually put things in perspective and find out where you are and what you're really made of. Can you dig yourself out? And I do the mentoring stuff in the town that I live in, Scranton, Pennsylvania. I've been involved in a big brother. Good Lord.
Big
Sorry.
Brother program. I know what
Big
you're talking
Big
about.
Brother program. I've been involved in that. I'm actually also a board member of the NEPA Youth Shelter where we're trying to work on the homelessness situation of teens because it's an epidemic up here. I mean, we have kids sleeping in parking garages at night just because that's the one place they're sheltered and they're going to stay somewhat cold, warm
Right.
from the cold, and that's sad. So, um, since I've retired, I tell people I just taken on a different mission of helping people
Yeah.
with trying to, use my efforts and, talking to leaders in the community and trying to get things started and trying to help it because we need to number one start teaching this young generation that's going to be taking care of us when we're senior citizens, and then we're not preparing them now. When are we going to prepare them? I can't believe the generation that's currently, coming up. I don't know what we're going to do with them. You know,
Right.
they're not showing the signs of they're capable of leading with ethics. And I think, again, it falls back on the parents, the education system, the way that we change things with the No One Left Behind program, which is a disaster because
Yeah.
you're teaching people that no one can fail.
Right. Well, that's one
Well,
thing when we were growing up and going through Summit High School, and we had our coaches like Red and Howie and
Hmm.
all the rest of them. The one
Mr.
thing is,
Benedict, yep,
as hard ass as they were, they did instill in us that, you know what, how you deal with defeat is just as important as how you deal with victory. You know,
absolutely,
don't be a sore winner, but don't be a sore. You know, there is such a thing as a sore winner, and
absolutely.
you know they kind of did try to push that out of us. And you're right. It started when, and this goes back to, I'd have to say, the mid '90s, when you had the parents that were upset that their kids were on the losing team, and they stopped keeping score at t-ball games and t-ball
Hmm.
in general. You know, every kid gets to hit the ball. Well, you know, when I stopped playing baseball because I knew I sucked. All right, when I stood at the plate and I couldn't even hit a straight slow ball across the thing, I knew I sucked. So I didn't pursue anything in sports in that, for that reason. Maybe it's my own, maybe I didn't suck as bad as I did and I just didn't try hard enough. But then again, you know what, that's me. But my whole point is, when you put the ball on the stick so every kid can hit it, you're not learning the coordination that it takes to hit the ball as it's coming at you. And it was only
You're
later
also,
in life, when I went into the service, that I got into sports and started playing on the base softball team, on the base, you know, intramural football teams, you know. But I mean,
mhm.
yeah, when they started taking away the scores, and you know, no kids, every kid gets a trophy and all that. Yes, that did take away from very valuable life skills. Not even just, you know, I don't even know what the word I'm searching for is, but it took away from life skills, because you have to learn to lose in order to learn to win.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, a person's true character will be revealed in defeat.
Hmm.
I'm a firm believer in that, because that will show me how much moxie you have. I've been to in over 25 years of military training. If you take all the classes, courses, training that I've attempted, it's more than any doctor.
Right.
There were classes that were set up. I actually attended an actual course, and they didn't tell us until like the end of the week. They said week one, no one passes a
Right.
test, the physical test or this. They didn't tell us till the very end. They said, we want you to do that because we need to see what if you're capable of rebounding. They purposely had this course designed to where everyone, you came in there thinking, I'm going to, grit down, I'm going to fight hard, I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to pass. And we're all failing, and we're all looking at each other going, but we're given 110%. But, at the very end, and this is early in my career, one of the instructors said, we do this for a reason, because we want to see who actually gets it, who is actually capable of losing, failing, and coming back stronger. He
Well,
said,
when
you notice
where
the
did
people that
you
aren't here,
where did you do your initial Navy boot camp? Orlando?
or Orlando.
Okay, so yeah, you and I went to the same boot camp at different times. So
Yes.
what you're basically describing right now is 1 5 day.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
1 5 day, where we're all, no matter how hard we're trying that
Yep.
inspection, nobody passed. We all
Hmm.
were on the ground doing push-ups and sit-ups. In the end, you
Oh, yeah.
remember when we stood on the line and they walked around, they turned the lights off, walked around with the American flag, playing "Leave Greenwood's Proud to Be American." You know, 86 guys in the compartment, all bawling their eyes out. We were broken.
Absolutely.
We were
Yeah.
broken, but you're right. That's how they built us back up. And then from that point on, they knew what they were working with, and that's why on 1 5 day there was 86 guys in your company, but on graduation day you were lucky to have 20.
Yeah. You lose a lot
Yeah,
because
we
they couldn't
lost.
mentally handle it.
I to this day, one of the things I'm most proud of is that I made it through on the first try through boot camp, because,
Absolutely.
like I said, we started out with 86 guys on the first week of training, and when we graduated, our company was down to 22, I believe, and I
Wow.
was one of those 22, and I couldn't believe it myself, because, you know, you knew me as a kid. I was not the one that followed through with
Oh
anything.
no, you were
But
no. Come on, you were a tough kid though. You were always a
well,
tough kid.
whatever. Anyway,
Come
no,
on.
but what I'm saying though is, like, I've seen, the guys that came in with the chests puffed out and whatnot. They were the
Oh yeah,
first ones to go.
defeated. They were
Yeah,
defeated right away
yeah, yeah. So I
because their
mean,
ego was smashed.
yeah. So I mean, I'm not saying we should go back to a system of capital punishment where teachers are allowed to hit kids or anything, but for God's sakes, let them be tested properly. Not just
That
have
that's it.
not just your ability to pass a test, So how about some critical
Hmm.
thinking skills are taught again, like when we were in high
There you
school?
go.
You know?
And it's sad because the teachers really want to do that. There's districts where I live
Yeah.
right now in the area that I live in where this, because the online platform, because of the virus,
Hmm.
no student can be failed. These kids don't even attend classes. They don't,
Right.
they will actually turn in their work on blank paper, but they
Yeah.
know that they're not failing. I'm like, why not? You should still be held accountable. You're sending the
Exactly.
wrong message. And it's no different than, like I said, like participation trophies.
Yeah.
These kids, some of them are brazen enough to go, they were showing up the first week. Once the word circulated around that, hey, no one fails, they're
Yeah.
like, I'm not coming there.
Yeah.
And they're gonna move on next year and they're gonna be significantly behind
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like I was watching that South Park pandemic special, and in the first scene, Cartman, I don't know how familiar you are with South Park. I think it's hilarious. But Cartman basically took a picture of himself, put it on a tripod in front of the camera, and said, "Oh, my computer's frozen up." And it's just a picture of him in front of the camera. And then he went off and, did whatever he wanted while the class went on, and he got credit for being in the class. How many kids in real life are doing that? We're doing that before they
You
even
know what?
saw it on TV.
You know what though? That you'd have to give that kid an award. If someone's actually
Oh
doing that
yeah.
and getting away with it, that kid actually might be okay because he does know how to. He thinks outside the box. If he's actually able to get away with that, I might actually give him extra credit. But
Well,
you're
as
right.
long
Like it's
as
it's
long as
it's
he could
sad.
pass the test at the end of the week, the quiz,
That's it.
then
That's
yeah,
it.
I'm all for that too. I mean, if the kids were
The
if the
cardboard
kids
cutout.
if the kids got the knowledge to pass the material, and he doesn't have to
Yeah.
sit through it, because I got to tell you, I have to take a lot of courses for my job and all that, and a lot of it's just redundant bullshit. So I just skip right through the course, go right to the test. And if I pass the
Oh,
test on the first try, course complete. If I don't, well, then I go back and I look at the course. But yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, yeah, there's something to be said about people that actually know already that do get turned off, because that was a big part of my problem in high school is I got turned off by sitting and listening to the lectures when I already knew, not because it was taught to me in school, but also because my father, who was a very big history buff, and
Yes.
we had a set of encyclopedias in my house that could, rival the library, because my old man loved reading and knowledge and all that. So,
Yes.
you know, it was okay. On a Friday night, he wanted me to go look up. So, Craig, go grab the encyclopedia and look this up. So, I mean, I knew a lot of stuff, and I'm not trying to brag, but I knew a lot of history before it was taught to us in school. And, I'd get
Yes.
into arguments with Mr. Tierney about history, and
Oh,
he
yeah.
lived it, but here I am arguing with him. Well, that's not what this is. So, I mean, and I think he actually appreciated it, because back then teachers did appreciate when you made
Oh, they
uh,
did.
a valid, intelligent argument on material, as
Right.
opposed to now, where, like I said, it's not even a lot of the teachers' fault. It's just because of the teachers' union and all that, and the curriculum, they're not allowed to engage students like they used to.
No, and I've witnessed it firsthand, seeing it by being in schools, and I've seen the frustration on teachers' faces, saying, like, are you kidding me? Like this platform that teachers of 20 years, so they go back 20 years and go, my first year wasn't like this. My first 2 years, and all of a sudden, you switch the curriculum to the basic, and again, it goes to that. Well, we have to pass everybody. No, some kids have to fail
Yeah,
because when you pass everyone, you're setting those up that don't understand that they're going to fail. You're setting them up for failure,
right.
not success. And so it's travesty what we're doing to kids nowadays, from home to school right now. I mean, again, parents teaching everybody that you're all winners. Yes, we all want our kids to be winners, but we also have to teach them how to win by
Yeah, not
failing.
every kid is special. Some of them are
No,
just average.
and some of them are average.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing I tell my son. I said I went to every single school that I've ever been in, and with fear, not that I wasn't capable of doing the course, but number one, I never wanted to let my father down, and I never wanted to bring shame to my name. I tell people that all the time. So when I walked into class, I said it was a mixture of cockiness with anxiety. And I remember in some of the classes as we got a little bit older in my career, they would say, "Okay, what do you expect out of this course?" And they would tell you everyone, and then how do you think you'll do? I got to the point where I started saying I'm going to be number one
Hmm.
in every single statistic when we leave this class, not because I'm smarter than everyone, but no one will outwork me.
Right.
And kids are missing that right there. They're missing
Yeah,
that, like,
I'm the
yeah.
same way. When I was living out in LA and I went back to college thanks to a grant that I got from the VA, I was the same way. I went to Santa Monica College for 2 years. The only course I had any problem in and had a lower grade in was astronomy, but
Mm,
every other one of my courses was A's. In fact, my political science class, the teacher actually he he was younger than me, so he actually had me teaching a lot of his lessons. In
nice.
the sense that he would say, "Well, this is what the book says." Craig, you were alive during the Reagan administration. How was it like this? Oh hell no. Oh hell no. This book is oh hell no.
It is not accurate.
This book is romanticizing the hell out of 1984. But I mean, I was the same way when I went back to school, and it wasn't even just with that formal education. When I in 2000, when I went through the fire academy, I busted my ass not just in a physical sense, but the book work that we had because I don't know, maybe I gained an appreciation for the material and just the whole process of it. But yeah, the older I got, the more I really got into like reading and doing the work. And I guess
And
it was
that,
also because in our high school, let's be honest, Summit High School did not cater to our side of town.
no, not at all.
Our side of town, when you hit East Summit, those were the kids that were going to wind up being, the DPW careers and all that. Not that there's anything wrong with that,
Not at
but
all.
it was just we weren't the kids that they pushed towards college. Let's put it
No,
that way.
right.
So
So the same thing, like I said, my son right now, he's in some training for law enforcement.
mhm.
And him and I, we've spoken several times over the past weekend. And I was asking him, trying to gauge his, and where are you at, like mentally going into this course? Because it's challenging, yes. But if you're not going into it, and I said, you don't have to, externally say that. But if you're not internally going in there saying, I'm going to knock this course in his butt, but not just saying the words, actually applying effort. I said, anyone can say the words, but you have to be willing to sacrifice like an extra hour's sleep. I said, for instance, when I went through the academy in LA, I wanted to be number one in my class.
Mhm.
I had some shit hot people in my course.
Yeah.
I had a couple former Marines. I actually had a lawyer, so they were some tough people in our class. And I'm like, I'm going to be better, but for many reasons. Number one, the better and the more I do, the better I do in this course, the better I will do on the streets when I'm actually doing my
Yeah.
job. The better decisions, making process I will have by having the information. And that's what I always tell these kids, like education, while I understand kids say, well, geometry is not important. It's not important in a way that you think, but in your decision making in your life, it
Yeah.
will be. How you process and break things down, how you're able to overcome, what will you use? I said, in 25 years, I never once actually had my college diploma. It's at my mother's house.
Right.
I said, what I have is a copy that would sit in in my service record. So whenever I went up for promotion, that was the
Yeah.
first document they see. But I tell people, I said, technically, I used to, when I was very early in my career, going, wow, I never used my degree. You know what? I use my degree every single day.
Yeah.
I said, actually, my degree fueled my career. I
Right.
said, it helped me prepare me for a lot of things. I said, it also was the first actual accomplishment I made as an adult.
Mhm.
Graduating from college was the first accomplishment that I did kind of on my own, because in college, you're on your own. You
Yeah.
have an academic advisor and everything, but you have to manage your life, your time. Parents and teachers, it's not as is not as controlled as it was in high school, where if you were falling behind, your teacher would say, call you in, call your parents. What's that happened to me a couple times, Mr. Wheeler?
Right.
Called my dad and said, hey, it wasn't hard to find my dad too. Call the police department, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. But that's why I tell people, education is something like, people should take serious and understand
Right.
how much of an impact and how much it's going to shape the world. And I'll leave you. I just want to say this one thing. I tell people, I said, I carried a gun professionally for over 28 years of my life.
Mhm.
I rarely believe I solved the problem. I said, do you know why? I said, because I put a Band-Aid on a larger problem.
Right.
I said, while I don't regret a single day of service, not one day, even my worst day, I don't regret it.
Right.
And I don't regret a thing that I've ever done in the uniform, because I'm proud of everything I've done in that uniform. But I always tell people, education is going to be the solution to our problems going forward in the future. People with guns will not be the problem. That
Right.
is a band-aid on a larger problem. Until we, as society, actually accept and understand that, we're going to be in trouble.
Well, I wanna say something about the gun thing. All right, I am a lot of people, because of the way I lean towards with what I say and whatnot, think I'm one of them there libtards, but I'm a gun owner. I own a
I am too.
legal weapon, and I don't own it for the purpose of home protection or self defense, because I don't believe that guns solve the problem. I think when you shoot someone, you kill them, their problems are over. You've given them a free pass out. Whereas a baseball bat, break their knees, make them live in pain or something, then they might
There you
learn a
go.
lesson. But the reason I own a gun is because honestly, it's fun blowing shit up with it. It's fun to
Yeah,
it does relieve stress when you set up a target or a grouping of targets and you shoot them. There is something cathartic about pulling the trigger and feeling that pushback from the gun. And
absolutely.
yeah, it's so, like I said, I own it because it's fun to use to blow shit up with. And that's really the only reason to own one. If you're. And as far as automatic weapons, I know there are friends that'll listen to this and say, "Yeah, well, I use my AR-15 for hunting." To them, I say, "You must buy a lot of your meat at the supermarket.
Seriously,
That
if
is
you
a
use that,
shredder. That is
wow.
a spray and pray weapon that, it was never meant to be like a 22 rifle for a sniper for one shot, one kill. That is spray and pray. And if you're shooting a deer or an antelope or whatever you're
You're
hunting
not
that
eating
day
it.
with an AR, you're killing all the good
You're
meat.
not eating it.
Yeah, you're you're
All of it.
you're contaminating all the good meat.
Hmm.
So
If I ever heard someone say they were using it for hunting, I would say, "Who are you hunting with? Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder?"
I know, right?
And Jeff Healey your spotter? For those that don't know Jeff Healey, he
Yeah,
was the blind guy that played in Roadhouse. He sings
yeah.
more
Well,
famous for Angel Eyes.
unfortunately, we're at that age where people won't know Ray Charles or Stevie
No,
Wonder soon.
they won't know. Yeah, we're at
Uh,
that point. But I've heard people say they use them in hunting. I'm like, what? Now I am a gun owner.
yeah.
I carry guns, and I tell people I get it. I understand.
Mhm.
But some of these people that take, for instance, I love hearing it's my constitutional right. And I always tell people our founding fathers, when they wrote the document, didn't envision what's going on in society today. They didn't envision drive-bys. They
Right.
didn't envision the violence
You
that we
have
see
to
on the
read the
streets.
5 words before and the 5 words after the right to bear
Exactly.
arms.
There you go. And also, like I said, when people sit there and, it's my constitutional right. Also, I tell people, do you know why they also did that? There wasn't really a police force back in
Right.
those days. So you had to protect yourself against wild animals and possibly, other dangerous predators that might have lurked. You don't have to look at the police force that existed back then was only specifically for the city. A lot of cities didn't even have within their city limits, you couldn't carry their weapons because they
Right.
had their own police force. But once you left the city limits, when a police force didn't exist, you have to have a weapon because they don't want to leave you out there unprotected.
Right.
People don't comprehend like they think, oh, it's my constitutional right. Yes, it is. But it's not your constitutional right to carry it in the Capitol
Well,
or
that's
use
that
it to
that's an
threaten public
interesting thing you
officials.
brought up about constitutional rights, because now the big thing is the First Amendment. Because Trump was banned from Facebook, Twitter, all those things, you have these people coming out, well, they're taking away his constitutional right under the First Amendment. But now, yes, free speech, you have to
Mhm.
accept both hate speak, and you have to not necessarily agree with it, but it has to be all protected. But now Twitter and Facebook, those are not those are private owned companies. So to
Yep.
me, them banishing him and closing his account is not like they're taking away his First Amendment rights. It's like if I were going into a 7-Eleven without a shirt and they said, "You can't come in. This is our business. We make the rules. Outside is America. Inside these walls is
Is
Craigland."
absolutely.
And you're either in
Well,
North Carolina or South Carolina, but you're in Craigland. All right. So you
well,
could say whatever the fuck you
mhm,
want outside, but once you're inside, my rules.
my role. Well, it's funny because people say he's been censored, and I say I'm going to show you a picture and tell me if you can see this.
Move it
He's
over.
never
Yeah,
censored.
exactly.
He's
I
never
see it.
censored. He has the podium at any time he wants to
Yes.
speak. That's the White House press room. For
Right.
those people that are saying the president has been censored, no, he doesn't.
Hmm.
He at any time he wants can hold a press conference.
Yeah.
and say exactly what he wants. He's been able to do that since he became president.
Yeah.
He will continue to be able to do that when he leaves. Even as a former president, he will always have an audience. He can write an editorial.
Yeah.
So for those people that are ignorant enough to say he's been silenced and it's not fair, are you familiar with the press conference? Because I know
No, they're
this
only familiar
administration
with the
rarely
Twitter feed. Twitter
this
feed or the
administration rarely does
Instagram.
them. But if you look at all the predecessors,
Oh
they
yeah.
all did press conferences
Yeah.
regularly.
Hmm.
So he hasn't been censored at all. He has a podium that he can call a meeting anytime he wants. He can
Yeah.
call a meeting
And
at
and
1.
even and even the liberal media, the enemy of the people that he
Mhm.
called, they still have their cameras there.
Absolutely.
They still, and the
Constantly.
reporters are still sitting in the audience asking the questions,
Hmm.
whether he likes them or not. And he can, and he has insulted several, and maybe it was justifiable, maybe it wasn't. That's not for me to say. But yeah,
Right.
but because of the fact that the private companies like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that, they're not carrying them. Hey, no shirt, no shoes, no service.
There you
You're
go.
in our building. Outside there, you could take your shirt off and walk around all you want, but inside this building, you want to buy a pack of chewing gum or a pack of cigarettes, put on a damn shirt.
There you
I
go.
mean,
Well,
and
he's a prime example of like not a person that doesn't understand no. He doesn't
yeah,
understand that you can't have it your way.
right,
So he's a product of an environment where he was never told no or never to accept it or never to accept a loss. Like hence I can't believe 70 million people, not 77 million, that's wrong. However many millions of people believe that the election is that false, but we'll also say 2016 there was no fraud.
right,
Wait, there's fraud in every single election.
yeah,
There's a percentage that they actually use to gauge whether to overturn an election.
hmm,
We have never, as the president, for the presidency, ever even approached that number. I don't know what that number is. I
right,
did read it, but I forgot what it was. But they basically said if there was anything that was inaccurate within this percentage, we could actually overturn the election. Or
yes,
we've never even come close to
right.
that. So to have all these people sit there and go, oh, that's, and then hear people say, well, it's my constitutional right. I always tell people, you and I must be reading different documents because first and foremost, the document was written as a baseline for our society. Oh, by the way, 200 some years ago,
Yeah,
they didn't envision that they cars, planes,
right.
all this stuff.
Internet,
So internet, so Twitter,
yeah,
they didn't envision that. What I have always said, and I've long said this, is since people want to continuously say my constitutional rights, and here's what they do. It may take 5 to 10 years. You get a Republican team, Democratic team, and an independent team that represents each state, and they make amendments to the Constitution
well, that would be a
where it actually,
constitutional convention, which is
yes, where
how
it
we
comes in
got
line.
things like the Second Amendment,
Exactly, which
the
comes in line with
19th
society.
Amendment. That's how women got the right to vote, was because of a
Exactly.
constitutional convention.
We
That's
need
the
to do that
right way of
again.
doing things. Yeah. But again, this goes back to lack of education and knowledge of the process. They don't teach government ethics in schools anymore. They don't
No, they
teach
don't.
government procedures. Like, we know this stuff because of Mr. Akey's law class,
Oh
right?
yeah.
There are no
Oh
more
yeah.
Mr. Akey's law classes anymore. And again, this is the fault of administrations and whatever. But it needs to be brought back, and or else it's going to be, well, why can't they just do this? And the other thing is that, going back to the insurrection of last week, and even Black Lives Matter movements and all those, I've said this consistently throughout this whole year with all the riots. It's not the protesters. Protesters are there to protest. There's a small contingent of, you want to call them rabble rousers, gaslighters, fire starters. They embed themselves in,
Yes.
and they start
Oh
to
yeah.
look. I think what happened Wednesday was bound to happen regardless. It could have been on the other way. It could have been Biden supporters going there to rally for Biden. There was always going to be those same people were going to do the same thing. They would have just been wearing different hats because they went looking for a fight. All right,
Oh
the
yeah.
whole Black Lives Matter the riots that happened over the summer. The majority of the people that were there to march, to have their voices heard. It was that small group that embedded themselves in. They don't give a damn about the cause. Those people, my brother and I talked about this all the time. They don't give a damn who the president is. They just want to fight.
Well, not only that, they're a group of people, and I remember reading a report where it said there's a group of people that travel around, and that's how they make a living.
Yeah.
They actually go in, so they embed themselves with whatever town,
Mhm.
and they try to push a riot because they break into these stores, or let the people do that, and they steal items and they sell them. They
Yeah.
actually make a living doing this.
Oh yeah.
That's how they take care of it. And they travel around from rally to rally, and whatever your cause is, they have a suitcase where they'll open up. Okay, what's today's rally? This.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put this shirt
What's
on,
today's cause?
and that's it. And then you're
Look, the
right.
guy
There's
they
a
caught,
there's
the
a,
guy they caught with the buffalo horns. I saw people, posting pictures of him from a BLM rally in Arizona and saying, "Oh,
Mhm.
he's Antifa." No, he's not Antifa. He's a jackass that's looking for a fight.
We know people.
Seriously,
You and I know someone that knows him really well. I won't say her name,
I know
but
who you're talking about. I
she
know
knows
exactly who
him
you're talking about.
really well.
Yes,
But I'm going to go one further. Friends of mine, he served in Japan on a Kitty Hawk.
no kidding.
So friends of mine from the Navy have been posting on their pages. Actually, I will
See,
send it to you real quick.
they don't put on the backstory that he's a vet.
Oh,
Not that
he's a
that
Navy
makes
vet.
not that that makes it better. In fact, that
I'm
makes him
sending you his.
worse.
I'm actually sending you this picture. When you get a second, look at it
Yeah.
and you can share it.
That actually
But
makes it worse because now he's going against the very oath he took.
So I was shocked, and a buddy of mine who was on the ship with them, he said, for those that don't believe, here's his individual picture,
Mhm.
here's the shop picture. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then my buddy who he just retired as a scene chief,
Oh shit.
he said, yeah. He said, that's him. I'm like, wow. He said, I served with this guy. He said, this guy was he was a half a wit thin. And this is going back a lot of years.
Wow.
But that's, yeah, United States Navy veteran. And if you blow it up, you can see, the supply
Yeah.
office, S3 that he works.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you call it S13, but that's him.
Yeah.
And like I said, two of the people that I know who just retired, one's a master chief and one's
Uh-huh.
a scene chief. For those that don't know what they are, that's E8 and E9, which are the two highest ranks you can obtain and as an enlisted. They both served with him, and they both have said not so nice things, saying, "Look, this is forget politics. We served with this guy.
Yeah, he's a
He was
nutcase.
not balanced in.
Yeah.
That's why his military career didn't end well.
Right.
Like they don't know what discharge he received, but they remember it not ending well. Both of these
Yeah.
two people I respect and serve with and know, and they're like, yeah.
Yeah.
So come on.
That makes him even more of a criminal in my mind because he took an
Oh yeah.
oath and
All,
now he's a traitor. That it's not even criminal. He's a traitor.
all the veterans that
Traitor.
participated in this should lose their rights. When they
Oh
are
yeah.
captured, they should lose their retirement. The
Yeah.
lieutenant colonel,
Hmm.
they should lose their retirements. The one whose ex-wife turned them in.
Yeah.
Boy, he should have been nice to her. But
Yeah.
they should
Right.
lose their benefits because you have traded, and I get it. You're allowed to have a political view. People need to understand. By no means am I saying you can't. But when you incite and participate in a ride on the
Again, it goes
Capitol,
back to what I
insurgent,
was saying. If he
you're,
stood
you're
outside and waved his flag, it's one thing. The minute he stepped foot in the Capitol,
that's it.
he became a treasonous
Yep.
insurrection. What is it? Insurgent.
Insurrectionist,
Yeah, he became.
insurgents, insurrection.
Yeah, he became the enemy. He was a enemy of the country, an enemy of the state. That Air Force woman that got shot and killed.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's saying, but she was a veteran. Yeah, but she was also an insurgent.
You
She
know
was a
what? She wasn't a
traitor.
veteran. The moment she stepped in there, she was
Yeah,
no longer a veteran.
no,
I'm sorry.
she was
She
the
was
other side. She was on the
exactly,
bad guy side. It's no
exactly.
different than selling secrets to the Russians,
There
getting
you
into
go.
spy and espionage. This was a person that turned their back on the oath and the country. For what? What was their end game? What did they expect to happen? That we were going to say that Congress was going to say, okay, you're right, we're giving up. Ship is yours. No.
Yeah.
The minute Broken Arrow is called, the guns come out. You
And
know?
again, you're absolutely right. But I'll take you further back. His name was Bo Berdahl. If you remember, he's the gentleman that walked away from the base in Afghanistan and was
Yeah.
captured by
Yeah.
Taliban, and then all those soldiers were killed trying to rescue him.
Right.
Again, he was a traitor.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. I mean, he's gone through his court martial. They basically, wanted this black guy to go away. So I forget what he wound up getting. I think it happened, but no one in the military. I was active duty at that time. Luckily, I wasn't deployed to that region at the time, but
Right.
I remember the conversations at Fort Knox going around going, when this clown comes back, are you serious? They're going to promote him and pay him. And they
Right.
did. And that's horrible. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping they learned a lesson from that and say, we can't do this. We have to send a message that says, if you as a former veteran or current military person do this, either one, you're going to go to Leavenworth. And how Leavenworth is different for all those that don't know is if you get sentenced to a military prison, Leavenworth, first and foremost, it's like boot camp every day. You get 20 years, you do 20 years. You shave, you get inspection every day, you have to march everywhere. And if you don't behave, they don't have a problem locking you down because their philosophy is if you're going to go crazy, you're going to do it in your cell because we
Yeah.
will maintain control. You're here for punishment. They're not here to lift weights, shiv anybody, grow their
Right.
hair. You have to comply with all military regulations when
Yeah.
you are there. I used to, one of my tours in the military is I used to people that were captured for whatever reason. I used to escort people back and drop them off. I've seen people like just knowing that they're going to go in there for 15 years, start crying
Yeah.
right before we turn them over, and I'm like, you deserve this.
You did
You
the
you
crime.
you
Now it's time to do
you
the
did a
time.
crime. Now suck it up. Like don't cry now. Like what am I
Yeah.
supposed to change my mind? Yes, you know what? Your tears have convinced me.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I
now,
just hope they hold
let,
them accountable.
now let's say Trump does wind up going to jail. How does that? I mean, how does that work with the Secret Service detail that a former president gets? I mean, do those poor
He
bastards
would.
have to go to jail too?
Uh,
And I mean,
you
who
know
do you
what?
have to piss off to get that detail? Because that if I was on that detail, I'd be like, okay, who did I piss off? You know,
You know, the sad thing is he will never go to prison. If
right?
worst case scenario thing they would do is they would sentence him to home confinement. For
And
all those people who are like,
again,
he's going to
who do
jail.
you have
Yeah.
to sit there as part of his detail and wonder who did I piss off?
Oh,
You know,
definitely that.
was it
Definitely
was
that.
it
But
worth it? It was, was it worth
you're
it?
right. You're right. But there's some
And I
people are
mean,
like,
now it's not like
in
you're even
jail.
going to go to Mar-a-Lago or you're going to wind up in some third world country or something at a golf course. It's not like you're going to be at Bedminster or Mar-a-Lago. Be like, okay, well, at least I get to be
I could
outside
do
and walk
that.
along the golf cart. Oh no, you're like stuck in some shithole.
Oh, you're definitely gonna be stuck in some shithole.
Yeah,
And you're right. You're right. The person that draws that detail is just gonna go, "What the?
because it's
I
it's
have
it's
to."
going to be at least a four-person detail, and all four of those guys. I mean, it's like when they're sitting around playing poker. It's like, what the? So what'd you do? Whose wife did you screw?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. They're gonna. This is when you reevaluate your life choices. Going,
yeah,
man, what did I do?
yeah,
Jesus, boy, I should have dipped when I dove, or
yeah. Right.
damn, I should have did that.
Maybe I should have stayed home that night.
I should have did something differently
Yeah,
because apparently it didn't work out for me. But yeah,
yeah,
I've watched people say he's going to jail. I'm like, people, let me explain something to you. Presidents, even ex-presidents, even convicted,
yeah.
they don't go to jail. They
If he
go
were to go
home
to jail,
confinement.
it would be like what's his name in The Godfather 2. Oh man, what was his name? Clemenza?
You're gonna
No,
laugh
not
because I've never
Clemenza.
seen The Godfather.
Oh, okay. Well, jail basically was a condo on an army base.
Yeah,
That
that's
was
what it would be.
basically jail, and there was guards outside, but the tennis court, all the amenities there, but that was basically it was house arrest on an army base with a nice little condo.
But you
So
think about it, him going to jail, like in him being sentenced and restricted in any way, is people don't need to understand that's a prison for him.
oh yeah,
So even anyway, like as the former president, if you tell him like, look at how he's reacting to not being allowed to be on Twitter,
yeah,
like he's throwing a tantrum, like
yeah,
it's no different than when we did something stupid, something was taken away from us growing
yeah,
up.
yeah,
We at some point had to come to reality that, well, maybe instead of throwing a tantrum, I need to not do this again.
yeah,
That's how you learned.
yeah.
So,
No, like I said, this morning he's in Texas right now, and this morning he made a speech and
awesome.
he doubled down. He
Yep.
doubled down again. And
And it's sad.
for a guy that bankrupted 5 casinos, how the hell he thinks he knows how to gamble, I have no clue.
Bankrupted Atlantic City. I
Yeah,
mean, just read about it. New
yeah,
Jersey, Atlantic City, New Jersey. There's a part of Atlantic City for the most part is not a beautiful place to be.
no, no,
The
not at
casino
all.
area is nice, but if you travel right outside there,
Yeah,
it's very poor.
yeah,
And people don't understand that. Like, it's not. He did that because they
yeah,
committed so much money to him, and they ended up going like because they were investing, thinking
right,
that they were going to double their money, be able to do better schools,
yeah.
more police officers, community projects. They ended
No,
up
it was all
losing
about him.
money. They end up losing a lot of millions upon millions.
Yeah.
And thus that place still remains to this day a shit hole.
Oh yeah, I drove through there last year. My brother and I were just out
There
in
you
the car
go.
taking a drive, and yeah, even the boardwalk, you couldn't really.
Mm-mm.
It's gotten better over the years, but it used to be like after dark, you couldn't even walk the boardwalk without taking your life in your own hands.
Yeah.
And I mean,
And
like Hard Rock, they took over the old Taj Mahal, and they
mhm.
invested a lot of money into it and made it a beautiful hotel from what I saw from the outside. But you're right, nobody's going to go to Atlantic City because it's a shithole. And
Yeah.
it's not like Vegas where it's year round. You only get 3 months of good weather.
There you go.
So,
And Vegas is clean though. I mean,
oh yeah, no, Vegas. Well, Vegas, they
has
know
its
how to hide their
parts.
dirt.
I'm about to say they have their parts.
Yeah,
Just don't
but
go out, don't go walking in the desert. You might, trip over a body or
I'll
something.
tell you this though, and this is no offense to law enforcement, but it was a lot safer when the mob ran it.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
that's
of
a known
course,
fact. It was a lot
of
safer when the
course.
mob ran it. There was no crime inside the city limits.
Because basically, if you did something that they didn't approve of, you were
There were
going
a
to be
lot
one
of
of.
holes in the desert.
There's a lot of holes that they were going to fill you up with one of
Yep,
them.
yep.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah, you're right about that. I've always said that in that specific city, it was safer when the mob ran
yeah, yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah, so we've been going for an hour now, and I could talk to you all day, but it's up to you. I mean, I don't know how much longer this meeting will let us go because we're doing this over Zoom, not the usual podcast format. So I mean,
It's up to you, buddy. You want to wrap it up and set a time? You
yeah, I
tell
mean,
me.
just because they're probably going to cut us off on this meeting anyway because it's been an
Okay,
hour. So, but
absolutely,
Ty, I want to thank you for coming on and talking to me, and we got to do this again. We got to definitely do this
absolutely.
again, even if it's on Zoom or Skype or whatever. Because I mean, I think we had a really good conversation, and I apologize to anybody listening for the noise in the background. That was my heater kicking on. So,
Didn't hear it.
oh,
I
you didn't?
honestly
Okay,
didn't
because
hear it.
I hear it through the headphones because I got a whole.
Yeah,
You don't see yours. I got a whole like
I'm seeing you
console
got a whole
set up.
little nice. You got a
Yeah, I
whole
got my
Howard
little
Stern thing
microphone.
going
I got
on.
a secondary mic over there. I got a console on the table here.
Telling you, you Howard Stern. I'm telling you, like, come
No,
on,
no, no.
buddy.
I'm not as perverted as Howard Stern.
No, no, no. I'm talking about just the equipment and the setup.
Oh no, this
The
is
equipment and
well,
setup. Like,
this is the poor
I
man's
like it.
version. But
I
yeah,
like
I
it.
mean, someday you'll come down and be in studio. You see, I got my green screen up over here.
I
That's
see
for when I
that.
do video stuff. So yeah. But anyway, Ty,
Absolutely.
thanks very much for coming on, and have a great day. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for
You
having
got it,
me.
buddy.
Be,
Have a
be
good
well,
one.
my friend.
You
Talk to you
too.
later, buddy.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.